Welcome to ORA News Flash documentary on ORA USA. Today, we are going to interview the second national president of ORA USA, who also happens to be the founding secretary and first national secretary of ORA USA, in the person of Chief Emeka Iwunze, Ozodi. With me to interview him today is the current National Secretary of ORA USA, Mazi Austin Ofoha. I would like to start by giving Mazi Ofoha some time to say hi to our viewers. Mazi Ofoha.
Hello, viewers. Welcome to this edition of ORA News Flash documentary on ORA USA origins. It's going to be a wonderful ride in this our interview with Chief Emeka Iwunze, the current patron of Olu Regional Assembly and past president of Olu Regional Assembly, a man with so many firsts. He was the first national secretary, and for those who have been in ORA USA know him very well. He set up the template the secretariat uses today, and was a pioneer he was the second national president. So I welcome you all to this interview, and I sincerely hope you enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mazi Ofoha. Now, I will now invite our guest, Chief Emeka Iwunze, to say a few words before we dive into the question and answer session. Chief Iwunze.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. As you have rightly introduced, my name is Chief Emeka Iwunze, and I'm from the Dallas affiliate, and has been since the inception of ORA USA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Iwunze. My first question is regarding the origin of ORA USA. I know you were there at the beginning. How do you recall ORA USA started from the base of your recollection?
ORA USA actually started from Dallas and Houston affiliates. The Houston actually was the initiator of this organization, because the Houston affiliate sent out various letters to the Olu organizations within the USA to invite them to a sit-down discussions. And after that discussion in Houston, then it was scheduled there will be a convention that will invite all Olu citizens within the USA. I think in that very meeting in Houston, every affiliate that was invited selected 2 delegates that were able to go to Houston for that meeting. And it was at that meeting that the agreement was made that the Dallas will host the first convention. Now, Dallas hosted that convention, and then their interim government was formed. I wouldn't say they were, interim government that was formed in Dallas, and they were mandated to write the ORA Constitution. And then what happened was, when that Constitution was, that meeting ended, or the convention ended, that very set of executives that were formed were not able to accomplish that task. They were not able to convene for the following year as was requested of them. So eventually the organization did not take off as was expected. Now, later on, after a year or two, the Dallas chapter president then, who was, I think at that time was Achor Abuchi, he then initiated a second chapter of the organization to reconvene the ORA organization. Letters were sent out to various affiliates, again, trying to restart the organization as directed. Invitations were sent out to various ORA to come to Dallas this time. And at that time, we set up the committee. That committee was set up too, and it was chaired by, I think the member from the Los Angeles chapter, Dr. Forgetting his name, actually, Dr.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chief Iwunze. Are you able to put dates to some of these?
Yes, I could. On the, let me see, the first convention, the first convention was 2000 in Atlanta. So this meeting was in 2009. Okay. No, not 2009, 1999.
Okay.
That was when we held that meeting in Dallas.
What of Houston? When did he hold?
Houston was 2 years before.
Which would be 1997.
1997.
Okay.
That was, because these people did not perform for almost 2 years after the initial meeting. The meeting in Houston was held in 1996 or thereabouts. Okay. Now, there was that convention in Dallas that informed the first organization, the first executive, that were mandated to write the Constitution. So those people for 2 years failed to do or to reconvene again. Now, it was after 2 years of that comes to be 1999. That was when the Dallas chapter president then reconvened a new delegates meeting, which invited 2 delegates from every affiliate that has an existing organization in the US. Now, they all came to Dallas. It was this Dallas, the reorganization or the reconvention, that then elected delegates, then who were asked to go and write the Constitution, for which a formal organization will be formed. Now, we agreed in this very convention now that the convention will be held in Atlanta in 2000. Now, that delegates, they met in Los Angeles to write and draft the Constitution. And I can remember, it was the president of the Los Angeles chapter. His name is Dr. I don't know why I've forgotten this name, because after that, after the election in Atlanta, he never showed up again in any of our organizations, any of our conventions. But I remember the secretary to that committee was Chris Nwachukwu, who was elected as the committee that actually drafted the Constitution. And it was in that same group that they had selected him to incorporate the ORAUSA. And that is why the incorporation of ORAUSA was done in Atlanta, because it was Chris Nwachukwu, who served as the lawyer or the attorney that incorporated that organization. That's why we have our chapter in Atlanta. Now, having said that, in that convention of 2000 was at that meeting, then there became a problem or an issue. I wouldn't say it was a problem, because they assumed the previous executives that was already elected that didn't perform, what was going to be their fate? Would they continue to exist? Now, one of the members, which is Attorney Obinna Duruji, was then who moved for the dissolution of that group. And then the new group was started. And that's where the election was conducted. Gibson Chibu was elected the national president. And then I was elected as the national secretary. That was 2000 in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's how we took off. In that very election,
Did you have a vice president?
Yes. The vice president then was Chris Anyam, who is also from the Dallas chapter at that time. Now, no, I take that back. The vice president was from the Chicago affiliate.
Yeah, Ben
Onyedebe, who was elected the vice president to Gibson Chubu. And then Chris Anyam was the financial secretary, was elected the financial secretary in that meeting or in that election. And who else? Let me see if I can get the list of the.
After some, I think Ben did not finish the first or second term. Then Chris had to replace him, right?
No, he finished his first term.
Yeah.
But then he didn't come back for second term.
Okay.
Because his chapter did not return him as a delegate.
Okay.
To the convention. Then it was then that Chris Anyam took over from being the financial secretary then and became the vice president at the time.
Okay. Thank you for that history tour. Did you, as you mentioned, you became elected in Atlanta Convention. Was that when you became involved with ORAUSA, or were you involved in those previous?
I was involved in the previous activities, both from the Dallas chapter. And if you recall, when the previous executive that were formed, because at that meeting, at that convention that was initiated from the Houston affiliate, that convention was held in Dallas. And in that very convention, I contested the position of the PRO.
Yeah.
But I lost to a guy who is also from the Chicago affiliate. I think his name was, I've forgotten, I don't know why I keep forgetting this guy's name. He won that position as the PRO of that group. So
is it Felix?
Not Felix. He's not Felix. His name. For some reason, that was the only convention I saw him too. You know, he never showed up in any other thing that we did throughout that period. But he contested. He's from the Chicago affiliate.
This was the interim executive.
That is correct. Yes.
Who was the president? Who was elected interim president in Dallas?
The person that was elected that first period, right?
Yes.
He was from the Houston affiliate. Dr. Okehe. Collins Okehe.
Okay.
Collins Okehe was the one that was elected in that Dallas. And then with the vice president of that group was Obinna Duruji.
Okay. Okay, Ma Justin, do you have any question for our guests?
Just to clarify one or two things. This interim executive that was elected in Dallas, was it the one that failed to perform?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Now, when you organize another convention or a gathering where you appointed delegates to be in Atlanta, who was responsible? Who organized that convention? Did you have a president, or was it this interim executive that did not perform that organized that meeting in Dallas?
No, okay. It was the Dallas chapter president then, which is Dr. Achora Buchi, who made that initiation. And then with the secretary of the chapter, Dallas also, who was Ben Nawihe. They sent out, in our meeting, he informed us in the meeting that this is what he was intended, which we approved it and agreed to host and made the budget to host that convention. Now, at that very meeting, or we called it delegate meeting because it was not a full convention. It was just only delegates from every chapter that came, 2 from each affiliate. So when they came at that meeting, then we selected another interim group who we asked, mandated, to go and draft the constitution for which the organization will start with. At that very group, it was, I think there were about 8 or 5 affiliates at that time that actually showed up. Now,
are you able to remember the names of those affiliates?
I can remember Los Angeles was there, Atlanta was there, then Dallas, Houston,
and Chicago, of course.
Chicago, of course, yes, Chicago was there at that one. Where else that came?
It's 5 already.
Huh?
You've named 5.
Yeah, the 5 of them that showed up.
Did you have New York then?
No.
New York was in exam, but they didn't come to this particular meeting that we had in Dallas.
Okay.
Okay, let's move ahead. Can you tell us when and where you were elected president? How was the campaign like? Did you have an opponent, and how did the election go? Was it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
In my when this organization started, the other story was, like I told, how the members of the executive then, we were able to pilot their affairs from that Atlanta. The first convention went to Chicago after that. And then finally, I was in Detroit, is where I was elected the national president. And then in that Detroit convention.
That's in 2004, right?
In 2005.
Okay.
2005. And in 2005 convention in Detroit, there were 3 contestants who I contested with. And in that contest, there was Dr. Zumba from Houston and Chris Nwachukwu from Atlanta. They were the 3 presidential contestants. It was at that convention that I was elected the national president after the debate. At that time, the contest wasn't as, people, we called all the various affiliates, the delegates actually, because every chapter had their own delegates. So we're talking about the delegates, talking to different people, and eventually we convened. We had our debate on the floor of the House, and then eventually the election was conducted.
Okay.
And,
are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Major Foha, can you go ahead with your question?
I was just going to, for the records, I was just wondering, none of the previous vice presidents stood in for that election. What happened?
Because the one from the Chicago affiliate was not happy because of the way he was removed from office. I think he had a problem with the affiliates. Because usually at that time, the affiliates had a right not to send back their delegates. That's the way it was designed. And that is still the case today, I think, that every affiliate, you have a delegate, and you have to be a delegate in order to contest an election. So when he was not sent back the second time to run, I think he was not happy, and the affiliate, he never showed up on any other convention we did. Now, the second vice president, which was Chris Anyam, what transpired was Chris was from the Dallas affiliate. Now, if there are 2 contestants from one affiliate, for one position, it is expected that that affiliate must field only one candidate. So they're expected to do a primary on their side in order to provide one delegate for, because you can't contest 2 delegates from one affiliate at the national. So in order to get the primary, so there was a primary in Dallas between me and Chris Anyam, who was the sitting vice president. And then I defeated him in the primary. So that was why I was the person who vied at the national. He didn't, when he lost locally, so he couldn't come to the national to contest. That was the reason they didn't.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Let me go to the next question about your executive, your administration. Who were the major players in your administration? I'm talking about your vice president, the board chairman, some committee chairman that you can remember. Who played major roles in your administration?
Yes, in my administration, I had, it was a full list of my list of my executives, or my members of my executive. My vice president was Chris Emeka, who went ahead and succeeded me. Now the PRO was Chris Alekwe. The board chairman at the time was Chief Emeka Iwunze from Detroit. And now on my committees, Ugonya Mobi served as the Olu State Creation chairman of the committee. Chris Anyam was elected as was selected as the chairman of the, he was the committee chairman for the projects committee, because at that time, my first work that I did, I actually was the very first president who did the Homeland Convention. And I did it within that first year of my election. That means after my election in Detroit in June, we did our convention the December of that 2005. We did our Homeland Convention in Olu. And Chris, Onyamobi, Onyamobi was the chairman of that, who was the member of the Olu Summit. We called it ORA USA Alolu Summit 2006. We did that, and Onyamobi was the chairman of that Atlanta. Then Donald drew their list of members. I don't know if you need all that. I can name them if you want.
No. Okay.
So we were able to do that because what happened immediately after that, my selection, I moved to work with them because the Achike was very much interested in what we were doing, who was the governor of Imo State at that time. He attended the convention, and we promised him that we will support his project, who was building the Imo Olu Teaching Hospital. And then we agreed that we will be able to do a project there. I went home during that period, met with the vice chancellor of the university, who was Professor Amuka. They gave us a plot of land. That is how we initiated that project that we did in Olu. And in that 2006 that we did the convention, Olu, we actually did the foundation laying ceremony during that convention in that very year at that teaching hospital, because that's where we held that convention. So it was the best, well attended by Olu citizens as well as Imo State members that attended that convention. And then we started from there. The project kicked off. We raised some funding. That's how we, if you look at today, that there was, I think this thing was eradicated during the time of Chris. We had every affiliate that were paying $5,000 each time, what we called a project fund. It was started during my administration. Every affiliate paid that time, and then those who were paying part of it, portion, but we are raising that fund to be able to fund that project. We selected, and then eventually that project became more expensive. Then we had to scale it down, and then eventually did the one that we did, which is the computer ICT center, which was finally completed during the time of Ezewike. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I was just going to, maybe I missed something, but I need to clarify it. Chief Iwunze, who was elected the national secretary when you were elected the president?
Yes, like the previous administration, my first national secretary was Greg Nodim from the Los Angeles chapter.
Okay.
But then we had issues during the time with him also. We had a problem that he had a problem with the PRO as far as his functions and all that. He ended up being disgruntled and decided not to come back for a second time. So the assistant at that time took over, which was Christine Wiwi, became the substantive national secretary after Greg.
Mrs. Christine Wiwi of Dallas.
Of Dallas affiliate, yes. Because as at that time, she was the assistant to him, yes.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, are you done with your questions, or you have any follow-up?
No, for now.
Okay. Chief Iwunze.
Yes.
So what were the most remarkable achievements of your administration, both considering your first and second terms?
The addition of affiliates. I inherited 12 affiliates at the time, that I started. But by the time I left office, we had 17 affiliates.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was during my administration that we had Philadelphia. I went and chaptered the Philadelphia affiliates. It was during my administration that we had the New Jersey affiliates. New Jersey affiliates. It was during my administration that we added Washington affiliates. Washington, D.C. affiliate, yes. It was during my administration, we had Colorado. Now, but the thing is that by the time, before I ended office, the president of Colorado died. So the other members couldn't pick it up. They ended up, losing their membership because they were not forthcoming. It was like the president was the be-all and end-all there. So nobody else was able to pick up that chapter. So they dropped out after they were already registered and, brought in as a member of the affiliate. Now, there's one other, it was also during my administration that, we had lost, it was during my administration that Miami had showed up during the convention in Houston, but they never registered. So it was during my administration they formally registered their membership as an affiliate. But they had attended the Houston Convention, which was the last time when Chibu was the president. They came in as an observer status, and then after the meeting, it was during my administration they formally became a member. No, I take that back. I think Miami registered in Houston. So that wasn't my administration. It wasn't I take that back. Because I remember that they voted during the Detroit Convention, which was when I became elected. Yeah. They attended, but then registered before that convention. So how many affiliates now did I get? 1, 2, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Colorado. That's 4, right? And is there anyone I'm missing now? Which one?
Did you count Colorado in the 17 affiliates?
Yeah, that time, yes, it was.
Okay. So when
was Los Angeles still active then?
Yes.
Los Angeles actually dropped. They were part of the original organization. They dropped off, then later rejoined during my administration. So, but I didn't count it to be a member because they were there from the beginning. You understand?
Okay.
They were there from the beginning. But what happened between the time Chibu was there, some of them got angry for some reason or the other and never showed up again. So, and it was during my own time that they joined us. But I didn't add them as part of what, that it was me. Miami did the same thing. They also dropped off and then rejoined. But those ones I considered it to have been in the past. The ones that were original during my administration that I started and were able to bring in was the DC, was Colorado, was New Jersey, and then Philadelphia.
Okay.
Philadelphia. All those people was during my administration.
Okay.
Okay, and on projects, you already mentioned the land and the ICTC.
Yes, we secured the land during my administration for that ICT center. Now we laid the foundation. I have pictures to show that when we laid that foundation during that our convention, because we did it while we had that ORAUSA convention in Alolu. There was pictures to show for that very activity. Now, what happened was, while we were trying to raise funds for all that, to then start the project, it became by the estimates and quantity surveying that was done, the amount was too high. And we decided to scale it down to something we can start and finish. Because the amount they were giving us was in the neighborhood of 300 million, based on the type of structure we wanted to form or build. So by the time we scaled it down, this 2-year term and conventions that we are doing, we are not able to, other than that foundation we led. Then it was after, when my next administration, which was Chris, then we agreed on doing, that's when we finally selected the ICT center instead of the stadium type of classroom block that was originally designed. Okay. Because it was supposed to be like a stadium type of classroom.
Auditorium, kind of amphitheater.
Yes, exactly. So that was very expensive, by the quantity surveyor estimates. So we decided we were not going to do that. We wanted something cheaper. So we ended up with the ICT center.
Okay, thank you. Master, do you have any question or follow-up?
Yeah, he said something at the beginning that caught my fancy. Just for the records, Chief Iwunze, would you want to say 1 or 2 things? And what was the final outcome of that Olu state creation stuff you started in your time?
Yes, I had that as part of my committee. Now, during that time, that was also during the time of Udenwa, because we had a robust interest in creating Olu State. Now, we had this committee, which excellently Ugonyamobi championed. We we are liaising with the Olu members and senators and the states. There were various communications between the members of House of National Assembly that we are from Imo State. There were the senator from Olu at that time was Ositis Naso. And then with the cooperation of the governor, there was a series of consultations, which really the governor also formed the committee on their side in Imo State, who was handling the Olu State Committee thing. So during that time, eventually, the process was ongoing. We were very hopeful that, the state would be created. Now, that committee also, I made it a permanent, it wasn't an ad hoc committee. I made it a permanent, I got a vote to approve it as a permanent standing committee. Now, we had budgets, we made sure that they were doing, did well. Now, I think after Ugonya Mobi contested for election to run against Chris, who was my vice president, I think when he lost, then he didn't want to continue as the committee chairman. So a new committee person was formed and was appointed, which was the Lady Augusta. Lady Augusta, excelled, put it on a higher than Ugonya Mobi did, because she eventually raised funds, bought a bus or a van, actually, for that Olu State creation. That is, we donated to Imo State. Olu, actually, not Imo State per se. We donated it to Olu. That van was still being used by the chairman that was appointed by the governor from Olu, who was coordinating the activities of that state creation, as part of our contribution to that movement. And eventually, that, filtered, and, as the government things do, when the governor who was pushing it was not there, everything kind of died off that way. But otherwise, we made humongous contributions to that very movement at the time. Both financial contribution as well as, infrastructure, because that van was kind of brand new that we gave to them at that time.
Did you by any means have a picture of that van? Was it branded as a donation by Olu Regional Assembly?
Yes, it was. And even on the bus, on the van itself, it was written on the van that this is Olu, donated by Olu Regional Assembly. The presentation was captured on video, in our conventions, because we did it when we had a convention in Alolu. That was when the presentation was made to that group. And, that thing remains our property. But then, because it hasn't been followed up, I don't know where the van is right now. But
do you by any means have a video of that event?
The video, I may not, but I know now, that time wasn't during my presidency anyway. That was during the time of Chris, when that presentation was done. But I know what was happening at that time. I was present when it was done, but I know you may have to check, because all these cameras now, you video them. If you lose the phone and maybe those things were not transferred. But I know that there should be a record somewhere within the organization about. I know that herself, she probably do have record of it, but she hasn't been, I don't think anybody has contacted her to that effect.
Okay, Chief Iwunze.
Yes.
The conventions, ORAUSA conventions, you attended or you organized during your term, how were they? And can you compare with what we have today? Do you think we have made progress?
Yes, we have made
okay.
Tremendous. Every convention, I must tell you, that have jumped during my own time, I topped what my predecessor did. Because in the sense that we grew the organization in number. And as we were growing, more people were attending conventions. And it became more, because you say from the affiliate of 12, and it jumped to 17, you can see there are more membership coming in. So it became a need that the Olu people within the US became more interested in using the convention as their annual, holidays or vacations. Yes, we started by, during the previous administration, the conventions were starting from Friday to Sunday. But during my administration, it started from Thursday to Sunday. And then after me, Chris started from Wednesday. So the dates we already started increasing. Now, you understand where the progress is going. It used to be from Friday. Everybody show up on Friday morning, and then we start till Sunday and Monday. Some people will leave Monday, but at least it was from Friday to Sunday. But now, during my administration, we extended it to Thursday arrival. Now, during the Chris administration, it started from Wednesday. That is, it was increasing days. It became longer. People taking it as a vacation. Now
it's Tuesday.
Now it's Tuesday. You see what I'm saying? So it's becoming a whole week project now, or a whole week vacation, instead of just weekend that we used to do it during that time. During my administration, we had a small hotel we were using that time because we didn't have enough number. We didn't have enough history of people, what we use as a reference point. So it was after my administration, because when Chubu was, we were using small halls here and there that were giving us, people at that time, because we didn't have the number. Now, during my own administration, we started increasing to the level of Holiday Inn or Marriott and all that kind of stuff. Then from there, we started having reference points of occupancy level for which they were able to give us something. Now, we're having a hotel that can accommodate us. You have to be more than 100,000, room hotels before you can even accommodate our convention. But before, we could use the Howard Johnson during the time of Chubu and increase to, multiple hotels that were within the same vicinity to help us and have bigger halls. So those are some of the progress that we made. And I will tell you, frankly, that every president have added something to the what I would call the popularity strength of this organization, the strength of the organization. Yes.
Thank you. Major, can you go with your question?
I don't really have a question.
Okay. Let me go. The election of your successor, how did it go? Who succeeded you, and how do you rate that election? Where was it held? Mm-hmm.
Yes, the election was contentious. That will tell you that the spirit of the organization, because in all honesty, in my administration, the popularity of ORA became more, known than my previous, the reason being, I was the person during my administration that I started every convention every affiliate would do, which was then the national convention anyway. Their own affiliate conventions, the things they were doing when they are doing fundraising, the annual turn. I will invite my executives, like my vice president will join. At that time, what's his name from your own affiliate?
Jeff
Uju will join me. Chris will go. Sometime Ugwanya Mobi or Chris Wachuku, because I will invite them that, hey, I'm going to this affiliate, this and that, what is happening? I want to go and be present in that meeting. I went the first one because immediately after my election, I went to the Baltimore. They did their convention and they did their fundraising in the following month after my election in Detroit. So I visited them. So that particular one was the one I went alone. Then, but subsequent visits that I made to other affiliates, then they started joining me. Because when I announced it, say, okay, I'm going this side. Anybody who is interested can join. Let's go and make them feel happy. And that is how they started joining me. Sometime there was a time, even Onguzrik, no, not as a weekend, joined us when we went to Washington. Even when I went to Philadelphia to inaugurate their chapter, Chris was with me in that very visit. I went with Chris. Then when I went to Washington to inaugurate them, Gibson joined me. Gibson was there, Chris was there, Jeff Uju was there, and there's the Wiki also was there. You know, so those things kind of made affiliates happy that, you know, they were having people with different faces that joined to show them there was a national presence in those affiliates. So that was what increased the membership turnouts and participation. The same time when I went to New Jersey to inaugurate, because each of them that I came within my own period, I went there personally to hand them the, you know, I inaugurated them personally. I was live during the inauguration ceremony when they did their annual unit to welcome them to the organization. So that's how I did during my own chapter, during my time of administration. You know, when they tell me they're ready, they formed, and they're doing any activity within that period, I'll go there formally, then, you know, ceremoniously welcome them and give them, you know, something like a paper showing, hey, you're welcome to the national affiliate. That's how I did my own throughout my administration. So that thing kind of increased their participation, and some of them who didn't know about ORA became more aware of ORA and started showing up at the conventions.
So that means that in 2009, I was there during that convention in Dallas.
Yes.
When your successor was elected. Are you saying that was what generated the...
Now, what generated the... Yeah, because you see, what I did, I raised the bar. So there was a contentious that everybody wanted to participate or become the president. Now, what happened? Ugonya Mobi was a chairman of my committee, performed incredibly well, very eloquent, very, you know, well gifted, and was prepared to handle the organization. But there were two people. I tried all I could to say, oh, Ugonya Mobi, run as a vice president, you know. Then at one point he agreed. Later on, he couldn't. But then democracy, he chose to run. Now, what transpired on that very day, why there was a problem, was not because of the election. It was more because the Dallas chapter president then, the president of the Dallas chapter was a relation of Ugonya Mobi. So he was trying to do everything to make Ugonya Mobi win. So as a result, that was what caused the contention. But at the end of it all, you know, it prevailed. There was no yama-yama in that very contest that was happened. It was clear victory, but because there were delegates from Houston, from other affiliates, who they thought were going to vote for them on the other side. But according to the arrangement of what they said, they were agreed who they were going to vote for. Some affiliates said they want their delegates to vote a certain area, but it was not up to us to decide what that person does. So that was what raised that issue of making it a contentious approach, because if that delegate wanted to vote one place, and then that very affiliate wanted him to vote differently, that was where the problem, what started the problem and the commotion. You understand? That makes sense? Did I clarify the issue now?
Yeah,
Assuming now, let me be more specific. Yeah. Assuming now I am a delegate from Dallas, and there's a delegate from Dallas, yes, Dallas was even a problem then, because the person who became the Dallas delegate, Dallas voted for him. It was official voting where the president candidate who they wanted to be the delegate lost in the election at the primary. Now, when he came to the convention, because he knew that person wasn't going to vote for his preferred candidate in the national election, then he wanted to stop him from voting. He wanted to be the delegate himself because he is the president of the affiliate. But that was not how it worked, because every affiliate had to nominate a delegate. It doesn't have to be the president. You know, if they agreed the president to be, fine. If not, the delegate should be the one voting and not the chapter president. So in that case, he wanted to torpedo what the affiliate had decided, who their delegate is. And that is why that commotion that day started. But eventually it was quelled. And the account of those who voted actually prevailed.
I also recall, because I was there present, that one of the reasons why the election was delayed until very late in the afternoon was because Dallas had two sets of delegates, one sponsored by their board chairman and another two sponsored by their president. And the national body was asking them to go and choose which two to present. And they couldn't decide on which two to present. Eventually,
now, that is,
they were disqualified completely.
Now, this is exactly what I will try to explain to you. The Dallas side, you know, in our own meeting, we had delegates who were running for position, because you have to be a delegate in order to vote.
Yeah.
And in order to be a delegate, your chapter, your affiliate must nominate you to be the delegate. Now, in our own affiliate then, we had a delegate in the name of Chimezie, who was running for the provost position.
Okay.
He was running for the provost position. And there was no way he would run for that position without being a delegate.
Yeah.
You understand? So he won the nomination. Somebody challenged him, which was this lady,
Adazion
challenged him. And then he prevailed. He won Adazion in that primary that was done for him to be the delegate. So then when we got to the location during the voting, he was called to come and vote. The president now, using his office, said no. But, you know, it was wrong, because this person has already been nominated. He has already filed his paper to contest.
Yeah.
So even the issue, the reason it was not, we were not handling it the way it was supposed to, was because it was our own affiliate that was hosting. We didn't want to be the spoiler. So we tried to be kind of genuine, you know, try to find a peace. But otherwise, this was not even a contest. Because
and as Adazion also presented herself that day as delegate.
That's what I'm saying. That they just wanted to cause riots, you know, and create commotion. The same thing happened with the village, Houston affiliate. You know, if you recall, Judah Kechama. Judah Kechama was the president of affiliate at that time. They did not have, you know, the contestant from that affiliate. So he was the person to vote for them as their delegate. But unfortunately, their members, who was Dr. Ozumba, had a different interest, you know, where he should vote. So they wanted him to show where he's voting. He said no, that he wasn't going to show them, that he's a secret ballot. You know, then they were saying, why would he? Then they nominated me. I said, okay, these are things you sort out when you go to your affiliate. But right now, this is the way it is. He has to vote, and it's a secret ballot. He's not supposed to expose his vote. So it became a rowdy situation, but eventually he still voted, you know. So that was what created, because if you look at the contestants, Ugonya Mobi is from Oru, Ozumba is from Oru, the president of our organization is from Oru, you know. So these are the people who were causing that problem, because they thought those votes would come to them in order to win the election. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, I recall that election was one test that ORAUSA survived and became stronger after that year, because it was almost crashing at that convention.
Now, let me also tell you, that was the reason that ORA survived, is because of the type of structure we have in this organization.
Yeah.
If we didn't have the structure, affiliate-based structure we have, this organization would have not lasted as long as it has. If it was just only based at the national executives and all that stuff, we would not have survived. You know why? Because in the process, Miami affiliate has left. And then when they realized that we are doing well without them, they came back. Philadelphia also left when their president had a problem. Now, when they decided and owed money and all that stuff, they decided to come back again. And in fact, in that very convention, if you remember, it was during my time, I was still presiding, when that Philadelphia, came back, wanted to re-register with what they call is the one or whatever the case may be. We said, I told them, no, you cannot change your name. You are from the same affiliate. You have to go with the original name you had. That there's nothing wrong. You owed money and whatever you owed, you have to pay. And then we'll go from there. But you cannot change them because we don't want to start a situation where affiliates will leave and then come back and change them with the same and come back. So that is why you insisted they kept the name they had originally. Now, the same thing happened, this is where the Detroit issue was a problem for me, even though I have left office at that time. This issue, because we had the law, the rule, that no other organizations should spring up within the 5, kilometers of the same area where one exists, So those were part of the thing that were in the convention, in the constitution. And that also, let me also, now that we're talking about this, I think this very convention or this very document that we're talking about that serves as our constitution, it was during my administration that we did it in a way that it became this very strong as it was. Yeah. Because immediately after my election in Detroit, there were problems from the constitution we had in Atlanta. In that constitution, the board was given an executive authority. So during the time of Chibu, this was having serious conflict between the board and the president. I was then as the secretary. When we go to board meetings, the board was very antagonistic. They wanted to control what the president was doing. So it became an issue. Chibu at that time wanted to proscribe the board, which I told him no, that we cannot begin to do things unconstitutional. That what I expect to do is for us to do a constitutional amendment where we can then be able to correct some of the errors. Because at that time, I was serving as a mediator more between the board and the president. They couldn't see eye to eye when I was the national secretary. So when I called the board chairman, he would tell me all the problems, what Chibu was doing, blah, blah, blah. I called Chibu, Chibu would tell me all the problems the board chairman was doing. Sometimes then it became an issue that any board meeting, Chibu have to let me know. I have to attend the board meetings in order to, because the people who were in the board at that time, these people were so, all of them were trying to cut somebody's head. Who
was the board chair then?
Board chairman was Eddie Unebu from Detroit. He was the board chairman at the time. So at that time, what happened was that they don't see eye to eye with the president at the time. So what happened was that they couldn't agree on anything. And one day I just called the board chairman. I said, what is the problem? And to be honest with you, board members there, excuse me, the board members at that time were top or low people. I can give you the names of those people. Eddie Unebu was the chairman of the board. Dr. Marshall Madu from Austin was the vice chairman. Chris Anyibe was the secretary to the board. And then Ferdinand Ubozo, New York. Attorney Ferdinand Ubozo was from New York at that time. Dr. Amos Ozrumba was the Houston board member. Justine Otiu from Atlanta was the board member. Dr. Chuka Obiesie, Los Angeles, was the chairman. Dr. Al Nadozie was
you said the chairman. I thought Unebu was chairman.
I said Dr. Chuka Obisie was from Los Angeles. Did I say chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't meant to say that. He was the member from Los Angeles. Dr. Al Nadozie was the Baltimore affiliate. Ifeanyi Egesionu from Boston. Fidelis Ezewike was from Florida. Chidi Ike from Chicago. Dr. Chidi Onyeneku was the board chairman, board member. Okay, that's how I said chairman. Board member from New Orleans. Ignatius Udechukwu was from Denver. And then Michael Oji was from Philadelphia. You know, these were the people during my administration, which we inherited some of these people. And then as the new people joined, their board member became, members of that's the Denver and the Philadelphia group. But the other people were the people during the time of Chubu. These people were strong men who knew Chubu from the other life. You know what I'm saying? Ima. So they knew themselves through the World Igbo Congress.
Okay.
So it was more of, we got you here again. You know understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it was a battlefield. So when I realized it was contentious, so what I did was before every meeting, I would try to talk to the board chairman, try to say that our philosophy and this organization want to move forward. We can't continue all this. There was time we will have board meeting that was supposed to last 2 hours or less. We will stay there a whole day because of contentions. You said this, I will agree, I know agree. Then one day I called the board chairman. I said, what is the reason? What gives you the authority to feel that you have more authority than the president? Then he started looking at it from now the board can hire the managing director of any organization. Okay. The board is the person who can hire the president of organization. I said, okay, but that was not the structure we intended for this. He said that, okay, he asked me to go and look at the constitution. And then I looked at the constitution then. The constitution, line 1 said, the board will form the policies of the organization. That was the statement, line 1 in that the board, and then the result was form the policy. Then he said, if you are the one forming the policy, why wouldn't you see the implementation of that policy? That was his line of thought. I said, okay, that's to some degree, but that was not the intent of this organization. They were just saying that they will recommend policies, but he said, but that's not what is written there, that I should go and read. Really, he was right, the way it was structured. So I called Chubu and I told him this is where he's having his problem from this issue. So at that time, Chubu agreed. Instead of saying that he will, proscribe them, because I told him that if you do that, I will not support you in trying to proscribe the board. The board is an element of this organization, but the fact that he's saying this, the only thing that can be done is to go to the delegates and request for an amendment of the constitution, maybe to remove that from that, board responsibility. He agreed, but unfortunately, he could not get to it before the time ran out. We'll try to make that amendment, during the Houston, which was his last affiliate. But because of things we were doing, as I told you, those times we didn't have the days available. We start Friday, we end, Saturday with the meeting, and then meeting Sunday, everybody's departing. So there was no time to do all these things within those periods. That was why during my administration, we started extending it to Thursday, so that by Friday we do certain things, and then Saturday we have the full meeting, delegates meeting, and then Sunday, we have the final handover, whatever ceremony that was left from the previous day, and then everybody would depart after noon. So when I took over, I realized also that structure was not possible. So that was when I had a mini convention, which was allowed by that convention. I hosted a mini convention in Dallas. Immediately after Detroit, I think within the first 4 months, I invited all the affiliates to Dallas at my own expense, so that we will have that convention and discuss the issues of the Constitution. That's all we deliberated for that weekend, from Friday to Sunday. We had a tentative agreement of what the Constitution did, because the Constitution does not allow Constitution to be amended off season. It has to be in a House of Delegates meeting, in a convention. Yes. So what we did was structure it, agreed on the modalities of what we agreed. Then on the convention in Baltimore that year, then we read through it again because all of them has been agreed, and then moved the motion to adopt it as a new constitution. That is how we were able to get that done during my administration. So as a result of that very convention that we did, we were able to manage the relationship a little better with the board. But all those board members were also still there during my administration. That contention did not completely eradicate, but they had less, less contentious, because it became recommendations that were given to the executives, and no longer that they must, insist on their way, because what was happening.
Regulator and enforcer.
Exactly. So what happened then, that it became really a big issue, because at that time we did not call them, the way it's being called now, a board. It was still there because the board member was still trying to say they are still the board, they are this and that. But eventually, after my administration, Chris didn't want to deal with that, because he decided to do another constitutional amendment, which now completely called it a board instead of board, as was being described previously. You see the movement now, how it translated. So that became very obvious now. Those people then lost interest in their fight. And then we also established the fact that a term limit for board members. Because what happened during that time was the board, they were all the same people from Chibu's administration to my administration, and then to Chris' administration. They were not being changed. So it was during that Chris administration that we decided to set a term limit, that you cannot go more than 2 terms consecutively. If your members want to return you, you must break off one time and then come back. They are sending you back, but not to be there for life. And that's how we accomplished some of the, dismantle some of those people.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Major, do you have any question?
One thing, thank you, Chief Iwunze, for going down memory lane. I appreciate this. You have really enriched this our discussion. But one thing I seem to notice is that at some point, people lost interest in affairs of ORAUSA, or they just stopped coming. You have mentioned some names who were not only pioneers, but played very prominent role in the formation and the running of ORAUSA. But at some point, they faded away, including affiliates, either because they lost the election or their leader was no longer there. So I'm really wondering, but because I'm seeing a slightly different scenario now, people tend to stay there as long as possible. What would you think? Was it because there was too much animosity involved in these elections that made people tend to lose interest thereafter?
Now, management of relationships has a lot to do with things. Ima, to be honest with you, I will, this may be off record, but I'm going to tell you this. Now, the issue of Chibu was a big contentious issue to most people in those eras. You see what I'm saying? Because one, when I told you we started this organization, both the Dallas Convention and all those meetings I made prior to, Chibu was not a member. Chibu did not participate in any of them. Now, Chibu showed up in Atlanta, And in reality, when we came to Atlanta, Chibu was not there to even contest an election. You understand? He did not come, but it was as a result of some political terrain and trying to enlarge this organization. It was during that time we brought Chibu in to be the leader. Now, that particular move didn't make a lot of people happy because they felt, a private conversation that I'm giving you, what some of the, to answer your question.
Sure.
Some of people didn't feel happy that all the toils, like Chris Nwachukwu was supposed to be the first national secretary. That's the way we slotted in Chris Nwachukwu. I was the person who called Chief. See, since you were the secretary to the interim administrator that formed this thing, that we want to make you the secretary to the organization. And that Obinna Duriji was slotted to be the national president. That is our plan going to Atlanta. But on getting to Atlanta, Achiku Denwa showed up. When he came in, he then, at that point, informed Obinna Duriji that he's going to make him a commissioner in Imo State. Okay? So Obinna was no longer a candidate to the election. So at that time, we started running around trying to find who we should hand the leadership to the organization. Now, it was that time I personally called one Nasa Madume. I don't know if you know him.
Of course, of course.
Yes. Okay, you know Nasa, yeah, but I don't know about if you know him. So Nasa, we started looking for people who would take over. From the Dallas chapter, we had a lot of people, but nobody was interested in running as the president at that time. Now, Acho Rabuchi, who was also the president here, we were not in good terms with him. We didn't want him to go beyond. There was political issues there. So we insisted that we want somebody else. At that time, I personally was part of the players. There were 5 of us who actually, myself, one woman from the Dallas chapter, Godi Hebu, Obinna Duriji, and that NASA. I called them together and say, hey, who do we want to nominate? The person who will take over this position. Now, since Obinna was no longer a candidate, now we called all these people. I asked them, they said they were not. We called Bernard Mwiu. He said he was not interested. We called Dr. Chuma, who is also from Dallas. He said he wasn't interested. Now, there was one candidate who was coming forward that time from a different place. I think it was from Baltimore or so. But then we realized that candidate, because, like I said, there were political issues. We had problem with Acho from Dallas area. We didn't want him to go. So that person had a relationship with Acho. We said, no, this will not work for us. So we started looking for a neutral person. It was me, personally, I'm telling you, when I asked NASA said, Niagara, but Niagara somebody that may want to run. Yeah, when he went and brought Chibu to us, when we were standing, he brought Chibu. I was the person who asked Chibu with interest to run. Chibu said no. No, Chibu said yes, but that was his statement. Now the mayor contest there. You see, okay, all you need to do, tell us that you will run and your affiliate is paid their 500. Yes, it's okay. Then he went and paid for that the nomination fee for the affiliate, which was $500. And then we adopted him as our candidate. Now, when we adopted him, Chris Nwachukwu, when I informed him, saying I'm going to go candidate president, so when he said no, Chibu, that's no. That if Chibu wins the presidency, he's not going to run for the secretary. See why? That's Nyacho got dominated, and this was his word. So I thought he was bluffing. So eventually, we went to that election. We nominated the returning officer, which was in the name of Edu Nebo, that who eventually became the board chairman. We nominated him as the returning officer. That Greg Nodim, we nominated him as the secretary to that committee. And then there was one other person from somewhere, I don't remember who that was from. So the contest came. It was Chibu and Ozurumba. and one other guy from Austin who contested for that presidency. Chibu won because we were doing it one after the other. When Chibu won, then I nominated Chris Nwachukwu as the secretary. Chris declined because he had told me, he asked Nyagida and he told me, and I remember the guy. It wasn't the person that contested with Chibu, Dr. Angorioha. That was the guy who was the chairman of that interim group that wrote the constitution from Los Angeles. Dr. Angorioha from Owonyolu, Botobi, Los Angeles. Now it was three of them, Dr. Angorioha, Chibu, and then Ozurumba from Houston. Chibu was from New Orleans. So three of them contested, Chibu won. Now, when Chibu won, we came to the secretary position. No, we did the vice president. He went to Chicago. Then the secretary, Chris, declined to accept the position. He was unopposed at the time because nobody else. So when Chris declined, because he was the delegate, nobody else was the delegate that was contesting. So at that point, it was the delegates must fill the positions. I was not a delegate from Dallas. Now, when no other delegate was interested in that position, that was when I was nominated to be the national secretary. I accepted because I didn't want the plan, to fail. So that was why I accepted that position as the national secretary. And then that ended. Then PRO went to this guy from Houston, Oji. And then other positions were filled. That was in Atlanta. Now, when that happened, in fact, Chris was so angry. Chris Nwachukwu was so angry that he said he was going to withdraw the certificate of incorporation of the organization because of Chibu emerging as the president that he's not, that was his position. It was me. I called him. I called Ugonya Mobi, who is there in Atlanta with him. I begged Chris, say, look, Chris, if you scuttle this very thing that we have toiled to get to this level now, the convention is over. What Yasina Chibu and with affiliate, that was his contention also. Now, with affiliate to his New Orleans to be not be just his person register where they are, no, forget these things. Every affiliate is beginning to come to form. Now, since he is already paid, we agree that he has an affiliate. Let us move this organization forward. I called Ugonya Mobi, because that time I didn't know Chibu very well. I didn't know him very well. I called Ugonya Mobi. I asked him, what do you know about Chibu? And if you remember, I told you something about the previous life. Ugonya Mobi was very, prominent with the, World Igbo Congress, and he knew Chibu from there. He said Chibu can pilot this organization very well, that he will. I said, okay, let's take him. Now, because Chris was not involved, that AD also was not interested in Chibu. And then Ike from your affiliate from Chicago.
Okay.
Chicago. All of them ganged up against you.
Is it Ike Okano?
No, not Okano.
No, Charles Ike.
Chidike.
Also called Chidike.
Yeah, Charles Ike, Chidike. He was the president of the Chicago at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, including Jeff. Jeff. He and I going to life story of ORA. Both of them ganged up, all of them ganged up, including Chris Nwachukwu, That time they didn't know who Chibu was. Because Chris was the affiliate president in Detroit. He wasn't. Oh, Mbama. But they quite all of them, Chibu, they said no, they refused. So because of that, immediately we were formed. And then we agreed now the next convention was coming to Chicago. Because of that antagonistic atmosphere, the way Chibu emerged, there was problem all over the place. They refused. There was no money. Remember, even at that time, the executive were funding ourselves, with secretarial work, everything I was buying with my own money. Chibu was doing his own. We managed to form, get the basic things like the letterhead and all that stuff. And then we continued. So even the executive meetings, it was very antagonistic because of that issue of Chibu coming from Nkwere, and the Nkwere does not participate in Ihindolu. They had that very, what they had in mind. That's what all of them were saying. I kept begging them, say, forget going there. Now, okay, let's agree. Let him come. He may bring the rest of the people. Since if they've not been doing, but he showed interest in this one, let's give him an opportunity. And then if he succeeds, other people will show. That was that Chicago convention. If you look at the attendance, there were a bunch of Nkwere citizens that showed up in that very convention, both Chibu's brother and everything. So they all came to that convention in order to show solidarity. Now, having said that, I met at the convention. It was successful. Jeff played a very big role in hosting us. Up on that time, I became close to him. It was then I called Jeff himself on the side. Say, look, Jeff, instead of fighting this fight, why don't you listen to the person that you are fighting? Because I've tried to understand him. Wasn't my friend, but he has interest of this organization at heart. So why don't we work with him and see what we can do together? So it was at that time that Jeff started showing interest. I brought him in. Then it was that time I also, because after my election, Chris had contested that time, that second time of Chibu to be the vice president. He lost to Chris Anyam, because all two of them contested that election.
Mm-hmm.
That's Chris Onguzrika, I mean. He lost to Chris Anyam. So it was Eddie Unebu, who is from my brother. That time I've emerged as the president. Eddie then talked to me, saying, "Yeah, my Chris, that I can help, I just rerun for that position that time." So when I was running, it was that very convention in Detroit that I brought when I was campaigning. All my delegates that I know that was voting for him, I told them to support Chris. That's how Chris emerged as my vice president, and he won. So I was working with him that time. So it was then when I called what's his name? When I called Jeff, it was me that linked Jeff to Chris Onguzrika, who is his brother, but they didn't know each other. You understand what this Ora did? Yes, honestly speaking.
Wow, they didn't know each other, right?
They didn't know each other before.
Mm.
It was through this Ora, through me, link Jeff to Chris. We became very close friends, all three of us, inseparable. That's, everything we needed, everything we had wanted, everywhere we go, we went there together. We did everything together, but they did not know each other prior to that very time that we all linked each other together as, from these other organizations. I didn't know who Chris was, but like I said, Edu Nebu, who is from my own town, Edu Nebu, all from Samamure. I'm introduced to Chris Onguzrika. Then from Mina Chris, then he became my vice president. From there, when I was talking to Jeff eventually, they linked up, talked to themselves, then found out they're from the same town. In one from Abba.
It's strange.
Okay. So that's how they became friends. They became brothers and now actually, together. So, bro, from there, when did he hear him again? Anywhere at that time throughout my presidency, where I was going, any affiliate I was visiting, all three of them would go with me. Even the first marriage, one Olu that married an Olu person in Miami. I flew to Miami. Chris followed me. Jeff, all of us met in Miami. Then that was when Fidelis was the president, because he called me and told me that this family were Olu citizens. They were marrying since they were youths, and that we need to encourage them. And that I told him I was going to come to that wedding. And I informed Chris and my executive, both of them followed me. All four of us met in Miami at that wedding.
Did you say Ezewike was the president of South Florida then?
No, he was not the president then, but he was the vice president to their president at the time. He was a key player then, yes, in Florida at that time. So, but he invited us, so we went. And
Chief Iwunze, what you just described now sounds to me like the formation of the so-called cabal.
I tell you.
No,
Do you
in
agree?
reality, no. Okay, let me also tell you a brief history of how the name of cabal came into being. Now, what cabal was Chris Greg Nodim that I told you that was the secretary of the organization during my first term. Mm-hmm. Now, Greg Nodim, that time Chris was a member of my executive. I invited Jeff Uji to be the financial secretary. He became all of us were in this executive. Now, what happened was, I told you Alakwe was the PRO. Mm-hmm. Now, Greg, then, that was when we formed this Aura forum website that to write, things. E-group. We had a e-group. Mm-hmm. So, Greg said, now he's supposed to be under him, mm-hmm. As the secretary. As the secretary of the organization, to be the moderator. I told him no. See, now this thing, a publicity tool, that it should be under the PRO. You understand? That it should be under the PRO because it was a publicity tool and not a secretarial function. So, yeah, now read his function. He reported me to the board. He petitioned to the board. So the board then invited me to come and judge the case. So both of us anyway, him and myself. So we went to the board. I presented my case. He presented his case. And the board voted in my favor that him Kuruwejo, that, based on the way I presented it, that is correct, that it should go under the portfolio of the PRO. So,
sorry, what was to go under the portfolio of PRO?
It was that time. How e-group, where the moderator,
like group admin.
A group admin, yeah, the group admin then. He wanted to be the person who will administer it. And say, no, not PRO, because it was the publicity function, to inform the membership of ORA what we were doing and all that. Now it should go under the PRO. So when board voted,
matters as simple as that would go to the board, eh?
No, at that time, now he was his way. Because that time, right now working a board who had too much control at that time. So they mediated, he petitioned the board. The board then invited me. I went with him. We scheduled a meeting. He presented his case. I presented mine. Then he was formed. And that time too, I took members of my executive, which Chris and Jeff, all of them were part of the executive to show in here executive meeting. So I have forms in here. Where defeat is in here, now the board meeting. Yeah, Potassium, we say the cabals defeated.
I got it.
Okay. So that's how he calls the cabals.
Yes.
So that cabal now was he said he has discovered the cabal. Was the cabal discoverer. Then Mua was the cabal founder. You got
yes. So that still boils down to what we were saying before. It looks like that was when the seed of animosity was seen.
Yes, he was at that time. Yes.
Accepted.
Yeah, those things, affected some people, both from the Chubu issue and then for this particular Nodim. Now, as one proverb somebody was saying that somebody who was sick. I say any him for yes, that's what for how be the way they say it. Whatever you say, they point to the same issue. Now all of them are together. So because the board was already not happy with the executive from Chibu's administration, they were the same. So they were also looking at us as an offshoot of Chibu. Because Chibu now, who they handed over to me, then Chris was, part of my administration. So all these things were being, transferred from there to there. So as they were fighting, we were also on our own trying to maintain a decorum. Now, those people, when after the Chris administration came into power and changed that constitution, now many of them felt they were no longer recognized. And then let me also tell you something, because, you know, during my own administration, they were still participating. They were coming to convention. They were doing everything because I did everything to carry them along. Now, what happened was when Chris came in, Chris has a stronger approach to leadership than I had. Okay, because even if you look at Emeka from Houston, you know, Emeka at that time was very antagonistic. He would write in that forum. There was nothing he couldn't write. There was Tony.
Sorry, Ozode, can you adjust your phone or laptop slightly downward so we can get more of you? Yes, you are better now. Good.
Okay. So what I was saying that during that time, these very board members were instigating people to write and complain. Emeka, no, Imai Jekam, I mean, please. Imai Jekam.
Okay.
Tony Egbe from Detroit. Tony Egbe was in Atlanta. You know, they were all writing, planting some animosity to the membership, saying things against Chibu, saying things about the organization. Then this Greg thing came in, then say, oh, this is the cabal that is running the organization. So it kind of inflamed it a little bit. But then Detroit, then when Chris came into picture, because he came in during that time, their own affiliate wanted to stop him from running as the president of the organization. They wanted to block him.
Yeah.
But we did everything to stop him from being, you know, dropped off. So that thing continued. So Greg put it, yes, the cabals are doing this, doing that. So those things were part of the problem we had. But eventually, these things prevailed. And because of that Greg, he dropped from the affiliate of Los Angeles, dropped off, but the data came back again. And then, you know, there were a lot of little this and this, but it was more of personality issues. Now, during the time of Chris, during my administration, this is, let me tell you also the main issue that affected those people more. During my administration, people were telling me to form like this what do you call it? To nominate the patrons.
Okay.
I insisted that I do not want to make any ORA member a patron. I said I will not do it, that patrons should be those outside the organization that are involved in the day-to-day activity of the organization, that I will not nominate anybody. I will not make anybody patron. Now, immediately after my administration, Chris decided to change that approach. He nominated Chibu to be a patron. He called me to be a patron. I told him I don't want it. He said, why? I said that I don't want, because if you do it, how many of them are you going to do patron before the day is over? He told me that I called Chibu personally. I said, why do you want to be a patron? You are a former national president. Is there any place the patrons are having meeting or any decision that you cannot attend? Why don't we not spoil this organization by having too many patrons, you know, in the organization? I declined to accept my nomination. I called Chibu not to, but eventually Chibu wanted it. Chibu was nominated. Then with who else that he gave that time as a patron. So they became, it was an issue. So those people who were players at the beginning were not happy. They felt that Chibu cannot be called Papa Ora when he did not form Ora. That Chibu should not become patron when there were people who actually founded the Ora that has not been made patron, even though they didn't make it as a party, no, as a executive of the organization, but they played a key role in forming the organization. Which I shared with them, and that was why I didn't make anybody, because I wanted it to be neutral. If you want to start doing that, Edu Nebu qualifies to be a patron because he was there from the beginning. Dr. Zurumba from Houston was from the beginning. From that initial meeting that kicked off ORA. There was this Obiozo, who was the president of Houston at the time that meeting was convened the first time. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So those people qualified to either be patron or have a recognizable position in ORA. But because of the fact that they were not playing, they felt, agitated that these things were not going right. So these people were not made any position. So they were not happy. They started dropping off. Every other person started dropping off, saying, here was the cabal running. That is how it all started. That is why those early members dropped. One, for two reasons. Una, you cannot call Chibu Papora when he was not a founder. Because he was the first president, people said that does not qualify him to be. Then he also became the first member to become a patron. That all those things were unfair. That is how those early, people were not happy with what the direction that ORA was going. But at that time, I had left the position. I couldn't control anything.
Okay, we are going to be rounding up this interview. It has been a very great time hearing the history of ORA from one of the founding members, Chief Emeka Iwunze. Now, I want to ask you my own last question. What advice do you want to give to current and future leaders of ORA USA so that ORA USA can make even greater progress?
One is to make sure that the affiliates maintain their, superiority of controlling what happens in the affiliate, in the sense that now, if the affiliate can, when they nominate person to be a delegate, that should be the way it should be allowed, unless that member is a national officer, where they cannot, because that independence of affiliates is what has sustained this ORA today. If Nabra model where all the powers sit at the federal level, it will affect the organization at long run. Because once the power remains there, if anything happens to the national, then that means these other people will scamper and disappear. But if they have a level of control, what happens is that they will continue to feed at the national level. And that is why some of these organizations that disappeared, they eventually see that we are still making progress. They all did what? They all came back. But that's not that problem was at the national. It would not have been a problem. Now, the other thing also, that now they control, the leadership must fight to make sure that somebody who is being elected as a leader of the national must have been involved in either through the affiliates or must have shown a level of consistency in coming to becoming the national president of the organization or national officer, or they should have participated in a small level of the executives of the national before they attend to become the national president, so that they can have, an idea of what experience of what the structure looks like or how the function is being drawn. Now, the other thing also, with the national president must liaise with the affiliate president in terms of any appointments that they make in that affiliate. Assuming now you go to an affiliate, even if you are not in good time with the affiliate president, you decide to pick somebody there. Talk to the affiliate president, make sure that that person is also participating in their affiliate. Because if they're not having any participation in that affiliate, that means whatever his committee is running at the national will not transcend to that affiliate, because for that meeting, he cannot inform them properly what is happening. That was why we lost Los Angeles at some point, because it was only the president who knew what was happening. So once the president was no longer their president, nobody else had contact or connection to the national that was able to justify the value that ORA, provides. So that's why they disconnected. So to appoint somebody must be somebody who is very, very, based, very, very connected to what is happening in that their affiliate and attends meetings so that they can continue to inform the affiliate what is happening at the national level, because not everybody at the local level knows what is happening. So if they're not well informed ahead of time, they will not know what ORA is doing or how useful ORA is.
Okay.
So that is important. It should not be, because I like this person, I will need him. That person should really be so rooted in their affiliate activities. Other than that, the committees, they should also, in terms of accountability, and because that is the key to some of these things that happens. If the affiliates are being transparency is a key factor to people showing interest. If they feel that they are being informed, appropriately, what is happening, they should. And then the affiliate, the national president should, from time to time, to the best of his ability, visit some key affiliates where they are not showing much interest. He can either go to their meeting or go to whatever activity they are doing to fundraising. He doesn't have to contribute, but he can just attend those meetings to ginger them up and tell them what ORA is doing. Because his presence in those things will continue to have that connection. In my own time, he did a whole lot. That people knew me well, and I know who they are. And sometimes when they come, people will come privately and tell you what is happening in that affiliate. And when you are familiar with what is happening in affiliate, you can resolve their issue, properly than if you don't know who the key players are. So from time to time, they should, go and see what is happening in that affiliate. That is important to the health of the organization. And then back home too is important, because part of the things that we are doing is to relate to our people, especially in Olu. Even though now the government is doing their thing now, they are still going well the other to get the key factors, key players in Olu, and then, talk to them, consult them, and sometimes allow them to do certain things. Because that thing, one of the things that gained the interest of some of our people back home was during the times that we were doing publicity. I remember during the time then we had some issues with some of the people in Olu, because he was participating in us. We would call them, those key people, like Ezilo Manya Hambahu, they were, Greg Iheka, who we made patron. Giving them that patronship got them interested that they come to our convention till today. They except Professor Anwuka, who had some health issues that hasn't shown up yet. But there are some prominent Olu citizens now that can be identified and called to become a patron, to ORA. When they come in, they will become our megaphone in that organization back home. If we continue to do patron within the organization, we are circulating ourselves. We are not reaching out to outside the organization. We can get other people who are not members, back home there, make them patron of one level or the other. And they can be helping us in passing the messages across, back home. And when we need something, we can call them. Because right now, Greg Iheka them, and they are becoming old. As Aguishi, Ofo, Kama, Ategra a new one. So we need to get nominations from back home again about, people who are outside this organization that are Olu citizens that can afford to attend our conventions, make them patrons, and they will help us there too in some of these issues. Like now here, making a government, when they are, if we had somebody who is strong that can talk to the governor and do everything, he can be able to get us what we need. But when we continue to do it ourselves, call them and do this, it doesn't all the time give us the result that we need.
Thank you. Thank you. Major Fohan, do you have any final question or follow-up?
I really don't have a question except to thank Chief Emeka Iwunze, for speaking so eloquently and having such retentive memory and telling us things that happened at the inception of ORAUSA, and also providing solutions to some of the problems we do face today. Chief Iwunze, I want to say a big thank you to you. You've done wonderfully well. Until this interview, I didn't know the extent of your involvement at the formation of ORAUSA and the contributions you've made thereafter. Thanks a lot, and I'm sure the ORAUSA members will be grateful to you for all you have done as they have the opportunity to listen to this documentary. Many of them, their memories will be refreshed, and many will renew their commitment to ORAUSA, just like you guys did. Again, thanks for all you did, Chief Emeka Iwunze.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chief Iwunze, for coming, for accepting our invitation to come and talk to Ora Newsflash on documentary of ORAUSA history. It's very good to put this information on record before we start losing them. We have come to the end of this interview. So we thank you for coming, and we're going to end the recording right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just hang on a little bit.
Okay.